He's a senator for District 5. He's running for re-election in the upcoming primary. Senator King, thanks so much for coming on, sir.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Glad to have you on. Hey, I just want to get your reaction real quick because there are some new developments. Of course, the public corruption trial of John Woods commenced yesterday, and they're trying to pick a jury and that sort of thing. But last week, I mean, a big development in that case where you have Orrin Paris changing his plea from innocent to guilty. What's your reaction?
Yeah, and I want to say, Paul, I mean, it came out yesterday. To my surprise, I had not been contacted by either side, so it was a surprise to me. But out of the 160 people listed as potential witnesses, my name was one of them, and like I said, it was a surprise because I have not been contacted by either side on this.
Well, the distinction,
I have no connection to the college or steering money towards it or anything, so I really don't know. Like I said, really don't know what that's all about.
Well, the distinction there, they list the politicians in the article this morning who did steer money to Ecclesia College, and then they specifically list people who did not steer money to the college.
That's right.
And your name was on that list with some other people.
Yeah,
so.
and I was chair of audit during the time of whenever we did the audit of the Economic Development District and so there were several things. So I guess we'll just wait and see. I've not been subpoenaed. I know other people's been subpoenaed. And I talked to some others on that list. There was at least 4 or 5 on that list that we talked to, that I talked to, that didn't steer money like the others to the college or was involved with them, and they had no knowledge of it too. So it was kind of surprised. So
yeah,
but on the news last week, I mean it was just it was just Orrin Paris was innocent, and then last week he pleaded guilty.
Yeah, and he's the intermediary, if you will. I mean, in the case, he's the one that we're using this consulting firm as a money laundering operation, but the college has got to pay for the consultant, and that's where the kickback that's where the kickback scheme actually happened. So let's talk about Medicaid disclosure, for example, because this is really where this is all headed. I mean, I know it's a general improvement fund scandal, but, the reports are that the FBI is now looking into Medicaid and people making all this money and on the side. And, you had Linda Chesterfield, who was, now she's come out and said she was a consultant for a year with Preferred Family Health Care. You have Rusty Cranford, who, attempted to have a guy killed. I mean, it's just crazy how where all this is heading. And you have been on the forefront, Senator King, trying to make legislators have to disclose if they're getting money from a Medicaid provider.
Yeah, even going back several years, back before even all this stuff was coming out, you just started wondering about why are these Medicaid entities having so much influence up there. And, it just became a concern. You'd see votes that happened that you thought, now, this is a no-brainer. Okay, this is thing, and it wouldn't even stand a chance. I mean, it was just, thing after thing, and then all of a sudden you start seeing the other things come out in the newspaper, just like Michael Lamoureux and, Gilbert Baker with Faith and Freedom, where they, funnel money to an organization that then turned around and hired him as a consultant. And it just became that no matter what the headlines are, down there in the inner part of Little Rock, it was like, it's not even existing or happening or a problem, but yet you could see out in the headlines it was, and you just see legislators continually to protect, let's just say what they said. I mean, call it what it is. It seems to protect what we know. The key is what you're seeing now, and some of them that are saying, oh, I don't do this or I don't do this. Well, what was happening back in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, okay? What was happening in those years? And I even filed a bill in legislative council that went back past years to try and disclose, and so that was shot down too.
So I'm curious. I mean, you say that there was stuff coming out in the headlines, and it just didn't matter. It didn't kind of penetrate that bubble at the Marble Palace. But it sounds to me like what I'm hearing you say is that the way people were behaving was just suspicious, and I'm curious.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey folks, welcome. Good morning to everyone out there. My name is Paul Harrell. This is Conduit News Radio, and you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine here. We want you to help us build it. One of the ways you can do that, aside from continuing to listen, that's the obvious thing. Call us, text us, 870-275-9799. Sound off on our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Conduit News. It's facebook.com/Conduit News. All right, so we've got a great show for you. We'll be talking with Mr. Chuck Clifton from the Patriots of X746 coming up at 6:33. And then Mr. Josh Waters is going to be on the program coming up at 7:05. And we'll be talking with Josh about the 1789 Alliance and his dealings with them. Because we're going to be, he's met some great folks there that are going to actually be coming on the show here in the next, some this week and then others the next couple of weeks. So we got that. And then at 7:33, Supreme Court candidate Kenneth Hickson will be on the program. We, of course, we're trying to shed some light on this race because it is coming up in May. The primary elections are actually the general elections for, Supreme Court candidates for your justices. So we'll be talking about that. We've already interviewed David Sturley. Now we're going to be interviewing Kenneth Hickson. Last week, and really throughout the year, I would say, all of last year, we were kind of coming up with different terms. Marble Palace would be one, just a glossary, if you will, of terms that make it easy for you to understand what's actually going on here in Arkansas. One of those terms was something we coined called hospital math. And hospital math is essentially, you could just call it Common Core math, but hospital math is essentially the number the hospitals put out when it comes to their losses to justify a guaranteed taxpayer-funded revenue stream to support their business. And because it's a hospital, they use pain point politics to essentially guilt and shame everybody into never questioning their numbers. So the taxpayers and the politicians really don't actually know what the hospital's true needs are because the numbers that we're getting from them are biased. That's what hospital math is. Last week, I did kind of mention as an aside, they always talk about how hospitals are going to close. And yesterday, as a matter of fact, we talked about how there's construction all over the state. If they're about to close, why are so many hospitals expanding and everything else? Their rhetoric doesn't match their actions. Their actions suggest the hospitals are flush with cash. So let's look into that. Hospital math. Obamacare fueling healthcare cost increases. This is a great paper here. The problem, listen to this quote from Marnie Jameson Carey, who is, I'll tell you more about Marnie Jameson Carey in a minute. The problem is that America is being crushed by a top-heavy system of profiteers who are exceptionally good at extracting money and convincing the rest of us that they deserve it. Obamacare keeps driving costs higher for Americans, with hospitals, many which are nonprofit, and insurance companies reaping the benefits. Back in January of 2015, Conduit for Commerce released a policy position article on the private option and hospitals. And part of that article, folks, highlighted hospital statistics such as occupancy rate, revenue, payroll, expense, and total expenses. Those numbers at the time showed the trends. While occupancy has been decreasing, revenue from patients was dramatically increasing. Think about that for a second. While occupancy has been decreasing, revenue from patients was dramatically increasing. Capacity has been increasing and continues happening all across the state. While occupancy was decreasing, total expenses were significantly increasing, led by large increases in hospital payroll expense. The charge for an inpatient rose nearly twice as much as the expense for an inpatient, with payroll leading the expense increase. By 2012, the average expense of payroll as a percentage of the total expense had risen from 38.1% to 42.7%. And now we have new numbers, more up-to-date numbers on the hospital statistic metrics from 2011 to 2015. And the trends have not changed, and in some areas have gotten even worse. Arkansas hospitals saw a 2.73% decrease in their occupancy rate, down to a low of 52.2% in 2014. Admissions per bed down 2.98% to 37.4%. During this same period, gross patient revenue increased 33.74% to over $23.2 billion. And isn't that weird that their occupancy rates are down and their cash flow is up? Payroll expense rose 22.97% to over $2.7 billion. Net revenue grew 21.66% to over $6.7 billion, with total expenses increasing 20.30% to just under $6.3 billion. The charge per adjusted inpatient a day rose 23% to $6,284.69, and the expense, hospital's actual cost for the same measure, just 11% to $1,702.48. At the same time, charity declined 9.39%. Medicare, Medicaid, and other payer write-offs increased 41.95% to over $15.2 billion in 2015. This number was $10.7 billion in 2011. So, when you look at all that, what can you take away from that? What do we take away from those new numbers, the new statistics? Well, you take away, number one, that occupancy rates continue to decline, but revenue is rapidly rising. Number two, payroll is continuing to balloon in hospitals. And then charity is a leading declining category, with Medicare, Medicaid, and other payer write-offs are one of the single largest increase categories during the same time period. This means that people who receive some sort of taxpayer-funded health insurance are actually helping line the coffers of hospitals and their close cousins, their close allies, the insurance companies. There's a recent article in Forbes that was shared on Twitter by Congressman Bruce Westerman, and it dives into the growth of hospitals and healthcare costs since Obamacare was passed. The author of this article in Forbes is, again, Marnie Jameson Carey. I told you I was going to tell you a little bit about her. She's the executive director of the Association of Independent Doctors. Operative word there, independent. The article overviews how efforts on the repeal and replace of Obamacare seem to miss the true point of much-needed reform. The rising cost of health care, not simply having people insured. The problem is the rising costs of health care. Here are the highlights of that article. The article says that a lack of coverage is a byproduct of the real problem, cost. But hospitals and insurance companies would prefer to ignore the pesky root of the matter, that health care in America costs too much. You have hospitals and insurance lobbies masterfully, listen to this quote from this article, this is my favorite one. Hospitals and insurance companies, the lobbies, masterfully turn the public's attention away from the issue of cost and towards the issue of coverage. The reason? More coverage means hospitals get more money from more patients who now have deeper pockets to dip into, and insurance companies get more premiums from more people, including you, the taxpayer. Why does the average cost of a hip replacement in the United States cost $40,000 and in Spain it's $7,000? The average price for an angiogram in the U.S. is $91 and $35 in Canada. Between 1970 and 2010, the number of administrators in healthcare grew more than 3,000%, while the number of physicians grew 300%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. During the same 40 years, U.S. healthcare spending rose 2,300%, 2,300%. Doctors' fees account for only 8 cents of the healthcare dollar. Where do you think the other 92 cents are going? Administration. It's very much like our education system, folks. Between 2010, when Obamacare went into effect, and 2014, more than 1 million more hospital administrative jobs were created to handle all the new bureaucracy. Which means, right now, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know why you are paying so much in healthcare costs and getting less benefit, if you want to know why Arkansas is contributing to the program, you need to understand this fact. We now have 10 administrators for every 1 doctor, so even more healthcare dollars are being spent paying for people who never touch a patient, let alone sign a patient chart. These are all quotes from this article. Something is wrong when the average annual pay for a non-profit hospital CEO is $596,000, while a primary care doctor makes $185,000 and a surgeon $306,000 a year. The problem is that America is being crushed by a top-heavy system of profiteers who are exceptionally good at extracting money and convincing the rest of us that they deserve it. Concentrated benefit over a dispersed cost. That's what we're talking about. That was our whiteboard last week. That's the article from, again, Marnie Jameson Carney. Now, while hospitals, insurance companies, and their lobbying groups, folks, continue to push for more taxpayer-funded health insurance, here in Arkansas, it's Obamacare, Medicaid expansion, Arkansas Works, healthcare costs continue to rise under this structure. Insurance companies continue to add more and more people to their rolls, leading to huge influxes of cash through premium payments, now paid for by taxpayers. And many states like Arkansas grow government further by taxing these insurance premiums that are paid for by you, the taxpayer. Talk about double taxation. Here in Arkansas, the health insurance welfare program known as Obamacare Medicaid expansion, Arkansas Works, continues to see continued growth in the number of people on the program and costs. Let's not forget about costs. This program is primarily, we know, for able-bodied working-age adults who either don't or will not work. Not only is the Obamacare Medicaid expansion unsustainable because of its cost to state taxpayers, it further drives up costs for everyone, as highlighted above is what we have just been talking about. Remember, the state gets a 2.5% tax on all insurance premiums. So the root of the problem, it's clear the true root of the healthcare reform issue is the rising costs that Americans face, not simply having coverage. Many now have coverage but can't even afford to use it because the premiums have increased so much. Benefits are decreasing. Deductibles are high. They're so high it could bankrupt a family before a single benefit even kicks in. The first step in Arkansas that we need to address, the issues highlighted above. We need to talk about what's the real loss for these hospitals. And I'm going to tell you it's not at all what they say, and even their main narrative for instituting this program in the first place continues to blow up year after year, and I'll tell you that here in just a second. The issues highlighted that we've been talking about, we need a full freeze. We need to phase out Obamacare Medicaid expansion in Arkansas Works. There was a bill to do just that, HB 1465, by State Representative Josh Miller of Heber Springs, but it was defeated in the Arkansas Senate after passing the House this past legislative session. Governor Hutchinson opposed the measure, continuing to show his support for Obamacare Medicaid expansion, Arkansas Works, costing taxpayers millions and hardworking families thousands in higher premiums. You want to know why your premiums are so bad? It's one of the reasons is because of what the Arkansas legislature has done, and we just went over the statistics that back it up. This has nothing to do with hospitals that are about to close. It has everything to do with making it flush with cash. These people are flush with cash, and their occupancy rates are down. Now, there's also, before we leave here and go to break, there's also something else you need to know. There's something called a DSH payment, a DSH payment. It stands for Disproportionate Share Hospital Payments. These are payments that the federal government instituted for Medicaid and Medicare, and it was an effort to offset the uncompensated care that hospitals do. When they perform a service, they have uncompensated care if they don't get paid for it. Now, how they calculate their losses is, again, hospital math. It's fuzzy. They put the worst case scenario. They want you to think the hospitals are going to close. But did you know under Obamacare, these DSH payments or DSH payments, they were set to close or end. They were set to cease. And there's one Arkansas politician specifically, his name is State Representative Charlie Collins. He used the supposed ending of DSH payments as a reason we had to implement or institute Obamacare here in Arkansas. And wouldn't you know it, under Obamacare, the DSH payments were always scheduled to go away, but they would always find a way to keep them, and they never truly went away. Think about that for a second. One of their key arguments as to why hospitals needed it was a scam as well, a complete scam. Congress has delayed the overall 17% cut in DSH payments for 2 more years at this point. Estimated DSH payments for fiscal year 2018 for Arkansas, state and federal, $68.7 million. Even if the DSH payments were cut, this would only cut Arkansas DSH payments by 1.2% down to $67.8 million. In 20 states, even if DSH reductions were enacted for fiscal year 18, this reduction is greater than the decline in hospital uncompensated care, which Obamacare Medicaid expansion was supposed to fix. In Mississippi, where they did not expand Medicaid, the Republican governor is not convinced that the planned DSH payments will ever go away. How many times do they have to claim one thing and the opposite happen? How many times does that have to happen until their credibility in being a leader and trying to decide what we do next is shot? How many times does it have to happen? The DSH payments to hospitals are still going on. They've never gone away. They never will go away. And yet, you guys use the government to get a guaranteed flow of taxpayer revenue to your business. Must be nice. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
Welcome to the Arkansas Obamacare Hotline. We would be more than happy to help you enroll in Arkansas Obamacare today. We just need a little information about you. Let's get started. If you're disabled, pregnant, or looking for medical care for your child, the program is currently full, and there's no doctors to see you. Please hang up now. If you're an able-bodied adult, please press 1. If you're currently employed, we're sorry, but you most likely do not qualify for the program. Please quit your job and call back later. If you don't work and instead play video games all day with your cats in your grandmother's basement, please press 1. If you've never lived in Arkansas, press 1. If you currently live in another state, press 1. If you recently purchased a home in New Jersey for $750,000, please press 1. If your current identity has previously been used by another person, was created before your actual date of birth, or doesn't really exist, please press 1. Congratulations! It sounds like you're the perfect candidate to receive Arkansas Obamacare. Please stay on the line, and a hardworking DHS employee will be with you as soon as possible. While you're waiting, feel free to relax as your ambitions to gainful employment fade away. PHP Parody.
The Declaration will be a triumph. I tell you, a triumph. If I was ever sure of anything, I'm sure of that. A triumph. And if it isn't, we've still got 4 days left to think of something else.
People on Facebook kind of certainly telling their stories, everything that the insurance companies have done to them, what their insurance used to be like, what it is now. And really, the left has accused me before on Twitter of making this oversimplified. But if you want to know why you're paying more for your health insurance, it's because that the Obamacare was at the heart was about redistributing the wealth. And so you pay more so that they can give away insurance for free to other people. I mean, that's what it's always been about. It's not a very complicated thing. I want you to throw this part of the we've got this up on the screen for you. Look at this graphic here. We covered this just now, but between 2010, when Obamacare went into effect, and 2014, more than 1 million more hospital administrative jobs were created to handle all the new bureaucracy. And that part in red there, that is the key. I want you to think about this. We now have 10 administrators for every 1 doctor. So even more health care dollars are being spent paying for people who never touch a patient, let alone sign a patient chart. Something is wrong with the average annual pay for a nonprofit hospital CEO is $596,000, while a primary care doctor makes $185,000. Now think about this for a second. These people, these hospital administrators, how do you think they feel about this segment? That I'm exposing this, that Conduit News is exposing this. How do you think they feel about this? They're probably pretty mad. Do you think they'd be mad enough if somebody's trying to save money or reform health care? You think they'd be mad enough to go find them a candidate? To go try to primary good politicians that are not going to bow down to the status quo just because you're a hospital administrator or CEO? Yeah, I think they might, because this is about power to them, and they don't care. They look at that statistic and they say, but I'm necessary. Yeah, whatever. Unbelievable. There appears to be a lot of profit in nonprofit hospitals, and the construction goes on. Change that hospital sign from blue to orange to stand for all of the construction fence and orange cones, please. That's what you're doing with our money. Back in a minute. When you decided to run your Medicaid disclosure bill for transparency, and of course you've tried to run it several times, you try to change the rules, you try to actually run the bill, was it just your personal suspicion, or was it something else? And were there other people and colleagues that you would talk to that, you guys were like, hey, something weird's going on, something fishy's going on? What really was it that made you say, you know what, we need to try to disclose if there's something nefarious going on?
Yeah, I think there were some bills and stuff, but if you look at when I came into office, we spent $3.145 billion on Medicaid. We're spending well over $7 billion now and continue to go up. So the amount of Medicaid dollars that we are spending is going up. And if you look at our state budget, once again, the $172 million proposed increase, that's if the money comes in next year, once again, 130-something million of the increase is going to Medicaid. 3-4 times the amount that's going to education. Once again, we're seeing that, crime and those things that would make our community safer is being neglected at a time that a crime is getting worse and worse and worse. Just look at Pulaski County. And you see these little, topical ointments put to that type of wound, like, more money to county jails for, to house inmates. Well, that's not bad, but the problem is we just closed 2 prisons because of staffing, reality money. So, I talked to a law enforcement person last night that just said that, there's habitual criminals in their communities that they're so frustrated at that they can't lock up. Once again, you look at all the increases that we see. We need money for highways. Guess what? We can't have money for highways because of all these Medicaid. And so why are we continually increasing at an unsustainable rate? And, Paul, we've talked about this multiple times. This is what frustrates the establishment down there so much is that when you go out and say the truth, they come out and say this total lie that, well, I was going to spend $100 million more next year, but now I'm only going to spend $50 million more. So I saved you. We're having savings of $50 million. Okay, that's not right. That's just a total lie.
Yes.
I mean, we're spending record amounts of money, and so it's all in Medicaid. I mean, I've just been down there so long that it's just the last few years, and we continue to give more billions to these big insurance companies.
Mm-hmm. So, and there's no way of knowing, how many people are really caught up in all of this. But I think you hit the nail on the head. If we were spending
Egg? What egg?
America, the birth of a new nation.
If only we could be sure of what kind of a bird it's going to be.
Tom has a point. What sort of bird shall we choose as the symbol of our new America?
The eagle. The dove.
The turkey.
The eagle. The dove. The eagle.
The eagle. The turkey.
The eagle is a majestic bird.
The eagle is a scavenger, a thief, and a coward. A symbol of over 10 centuries of European mischief.
The turkey.
The turkey is a truly noble bird. Native American, source of sustenance of our original settlers. An incredibly brave fellow who will not flinch in attacking a regiment of Englishmen, single-handedly. Therefore, the national bird of America is going to be...
The eagle.
The eagle.
For how many people running our Arkansas state government would have been redcoat sympathizers. Folks, Section 2, 5-73-120 of Arkansas law reads, carrying a weapon. A person commits the offense of carrying a weapon if he or she possesses a handgun, knife, or club on or about his or her person in a vehicle or occupied by him or her, or otherwise readily available for use with a purpose to attempt to unlawfully employ the handgun, knife, or club as a weapon against a person. Folks, that is the text of Act 746, which was passed in 2013, which decriminalized the possession of a firearm, giving Arkansas constitutional carry. And I want to welcome to the program, on behalf of the patrons of Act 746, we have Mr. Chuck Clifton. Chuck, welcome to the program, sir, for the first time.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Really glad you can do it. Now, I want to remind everybody that this segment is brought to you by the patrons of Act 746. They are on a mission to educate the people of Arkansas about their Second Amendment rights, about constitutional carry, about Act 746 and it being possession of weapon being decriminalized to the point where, the burden of proof on the prosecution is, I was going to say it's fantastic because it means that we have more freedoms here in this state. Now, Chuck, let me ask you something. When did you first hear of the patrons of Act 746?
A friend of mine had turned me on to it. And several years ago, when it first passed, a friend of mine told me about it, and I didn't I didn't really believe it, and I actually called and talked to one of the congressmen, and they didn't really want to come out and say what it was. And then back in, I guess it was October, I was on Facebook, and somebody had turned me on to the group 746, and once I got in there, those people in there really educate you on what the law is and what your rights really are.
Yes, they certainly do. And by the way, folks, I mean, search them out for yourself. I mean, we've had your colleague on, Mr. Tim Loggins, for several segments, and he's heading up the Northeast Arkansas chapter. And I mean, he's just been texting me that almost every weekly after we do these segments, that they have all of these requests from people who are going to Facebook. They're searching for Patriots of Act 746, and they're requesting to become a member of that Facebook group. And so, I mean, it really is a lot of people want to know what their rights are, is what I'm going to say. So let me ask you this, Chuck. I mean, what has transpired in you? I mean, now you're on the program. You're speaking for Patriots of Act 746. So, joining that group, where are you now versus where you were when you first joined?
When I first joined, Paul, I wasn't sure of what we could do legally and what couldn't, because some of the parts of the state, as the governor said, it's up to the prosecuting attorney rather than following state law.
Mm-hmm.
And as I become more educated about my rights, I began to carry open carry. Before, I carried concealed and just concealed it and rolled the dice and took my chances. But I started carrying concealed since I've been part of the group, and I use that as a tool to educate others that they do have a right.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people ask me at gas stations, can you carry that legally? Well, sure I can. This is your rights. And I give them a card from 746 to let them know, and I show them on the back what 573-120 says.
Mm-hmm.
That it says that you have a right to have that on or about your persons. Where the governor and everybody else gets this open carry, I have no idea for, because there's nothing in the bill that says anything about open or concealed. It says on or about your persons.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, do you still have to have a permit to carry concealed? No, you don't. Do you carry your pocket knife on you or in your pocket? Do you carry your billfold on you or in your pocket? It's in your pocket. It's concealed. So therefore, that pocket knife is no different than that weapon. You can carry it concealed, open, any way you wish, because all it states on there is on or about your person.
So let me ask you this. I mean, the governor came out and he said that we have constitutional carry, but then of course his definition of constitutional carry was wrong. Because he's still protecting the budget of the Arkansas State Police. And now he's trying to pivot. The only reason he announced this is because he's got Jan Morgan as a primary opponent.
That's right.
So what are your thoughts on the governor essentially saying, hey, check with your local prosecutor, to make sure that you can carry a weapon? I mean, we don't say that with any other law.
No, it's ridiculous, Paul. The governor, supposed to be an educated man and a lawyer. He's been a federal prosecutor, I believe, headed the DEA. He surrounds himself by people with big law degrees and college degrees, but none of them happened to look at the definition of constitutional carry before he made that statement. Because if you look at the definition of constitutional carry, it states in there from Webster's Dictionary, open or concealed, permitless, which means no permit required, carry it any way you wish.
Mm-hmm.
And that I got that definition out of the Webster.
And he is saying you can open carry under Act 746, but if you want to conceal, you still have to have a permit, which is just a very, it's just so strange. The real reason he's doing that is to protect the Arkansas State Police budget for people who, have been conditioned psychologically to believe they have to have a permission slip from government to exercise their human right to protect themselves.
You're exactly right, because it's all about the money. It's not about telling the people what their rights are. The state police receive millions of dollars a year from the permits. So if the governor will get on there and tell everybody, hey, you don't have to have that to carry in Arkansas. They think that everybody's just going to quit getting permits. Well, that's not correct, because you still need a permit to travel out of state for other states that are not constitutional carry.
Yes.
So for the governor to get on there and say, well, you can open carry, but you can't conceal carry. Well, that's blatantly false, because there is no statute to back up that to start with. He says, that to have a permit is not does not interfere, or he used a different word for it, to make you have a concealed carry in Arkansas. Well, a constitutional carry state, you do not have to have a permit. If he will look at the other constitutional carry state in the country, that's exactly what it is. They still issue permits, but it's for out-of-state travel. And they still have permits, but it's only for out-of-state travel. It's a cash cow for the Arkansas State Police, and they're afraid if they tell the people's going to say, well, if we don't have to pay it, we're not going to. A lot of people still are, because a lot travel out of state.
Exactly.
And the other states, I'll give you a prime example, Arizona. There's a lot of people in Arkansas that get Arizona concealed carries because they're recognized in almost as many states, and it don't cost them $140 to do so. It costs them $65. Mm-hmm. The fees are just ridiculous.
Yet I'm convinced that the Founding Fathers did not intend for the Second Amendment right to be something that gets sold back to the people, that gets taken by the government. Hey, we'll sell it back to you for a fee. And I don't believe we treat any other right in the Bill of Rights like that. Like, here, take this, or hey, we'll give you this. Hey, we'll allow you to have your right to privacy under the Fourth Amendment if you have a privacy permit. It's really, really a double standard, to say the least. Now, we're talking with Chuck Clifton. He's from the Patriots of Act 746. Go to Facebook, search for Patriots of Act 746, and request to be a member. Now, Chuck, you are the coordinator for Northwest Arkansas. Is that correct? And so what city are you calling from right now?
Right now I'm calling out of Elkins.
Okay. So how is the how is that chapter up there? How is that, would it be a chapter up there? How's the Northwest Arkansas Patriots doing?
We're doing pretty good. The last time I looked, we had almost 500 members. It's growing. And the more we get out and talk to people and show them that they do have a right, that if they'll just do a little work for themselves and just read the statute. And what a lot of people do is they've been indoctrinated into this for so long that when they read H 746, and I was guilty of it myself at first, I was reading things into the law that wasn't even there. It's because of the indoctrination. But when you educate the people, then they want more knowledge. So then people's wanting to join so that they can get that knowledge. And 746, you can go on there and ask a question about a gun law, and someone will get you the statute. They don't give just opinions, they give facts.
Exactly.
And that's what the people are after, is the facts. Paul, we still have that $1,000 reward up for any prosecutor or anybody that can show us the statute that makes carrying a concealed weapon without a permit illegal with a penalty, or a statute that requires one. You would think that one of these lawyers around here would have put a legal aid on that and sucked that $1,000 up a long time ago.
Yeah,
it would have cost him $20 or $30 to get it done, and he would have made a nice little profit.
Yeah.
We've not had no luck. We've also not had any luck getting arrested for doing so. I have made the comment many a times to people that say, well, you'll get arrested for that. Say, well, tell me who will, and tell them where to meet me or where I can meet them, and I can give them an easy arrest. Mm-hmm. I'll be more than willing to let them arrest me for concealed carry without a permit.
Yeah.
Because they have no statute to charge me with.
Right.
And they know it. The prosecutors know it. Matter of fact, the prosecutors, they're hands off. Mm-hmm. I've talked to sheriffs and police chiefs, and I talked to one police chief, and he told me, he said, we're doing the gun deal just like the medical marijuana deal. It's hands off. He said, I'm not going to end up putting my time out for somebody. He said, he told me about the medical marijuana deal. He said, if somebody's got below the state minimum and don't have their card with them, I've instructed my officers to send them on their way. I'm not going to end up in court somewhere because I denied somebody their medication. He said, we're the same way with the handgun, with carrying a weapon. He said, because there is no statute for that, and the area is so gray, the prosecutors won't prosecute it.
Yeah, and that's happened a bunch. I've had people that drop the charges after the police officer arrests them. The prosecutor then comes back and drops the charges. It's happened several times. I think part of the education effort is kind of learning what the debate is. It's you have to come to the conclusion that there are people in positions of power who do not trust you with your human right to carry a gun to protect yourself or your family. And that is, well, let me just ask you this. We're talking with Chuck Clifton. What are your thoughts on the enhanced carry bill that passed, that now we have a new layer of red tape? If you want to carry in these special places, the government's now they're trying to double down. I feel like this whole effort was a way to undermine Act 746 2013, which decriminalized the possession of a firearm. And if you listen to what the governor said at that bill signing, he said he disagreed with the initial proposal, which would have just given college professors in the existing red tape who had already gotten that permit. If you're a college professor and choose to carry, you would be able to carry on campus. And the governor said, no, basically, we don't trust those people unless you go through additional training. And that's really, to me, Chuck, that is the argument. We have elites in positions of power that only want us to have a weapon if we meet their standards of whatever they set. Respond to that, please.
Well, the story that kind of gets back to your last question there, Paul, about us having to buy our rights back. Not only are we having to buy this concealed carry permit from the state as to get them their permission to carry, now they want us to pay a little bit more money, spend some more money for training, to get permission for a right that's already been given to us. It should have been given to us on the first permit, but it shouldn't be a permit at all. The enhanced stuff, from what I understand, is 30 pages of regulations that nobody can comply with. And for them to say that, well, if you get this, then you can carry in these places. And now we're learning that a lot of those places are now opting out of it. So you're going to have a permit, by the time it's all said and done, that you're going to have a permit that's only good if you want to go to the state capitol and carry in there. The rest of it's going to be garbage.
Yeah.
Because we've already had universities backing out of it. If they get a okay for an emergency plan from the state police, if they approve that plan, then they can opt out of this bill. Well, that's a law. How do you opt out of a law? It's ridiculous, Paul. It's garbage. They knew it was garbage. The first bill, from what I understand, was the best bill, and then they kept adding to it, and now we've got legislators running around crowing about it like a fanny rooster. Yeah, and it's a bunch of garbage.
Yeah,
and I don't think the people are to do anything with it.
Yeah, they're trying to now take credit, and that's what drives me nuts. Is they're going around, putting out that this is a good bill, and they're ignoring, what they did when they made the sausage. Is they just bent over and contorted themselves in all kinds of ways to protect the governor. The governor did not want to sign the bill as is, and so then they come in and they start adding all this other stuff. And none of them really want to ever come out and say that. They want to say that it was a good bill, but because they made political considerations, the actual policy, as in how it affects the existing concealed carry instructors, how it affects the people, let's just say, was not considered because of the moderate opinions and views of Governor Asa Hutchinson.
Oh, that's right. And Asa got on there, and there was a poll going around. They were calling people, and one of the deals in the poll, they said, to this story to be true, that Asa Hutchinson has advanced your Second Amendment rights in the state of Arkansas. I said, well, start with that's a false statement. Asa Hutchinson hadn't advanced anything in the state of Arkansas as far as gun rights. He's threaded on the gun rights. Because the enhanced carry garbage, all that does is impede more on people. Mm-hmm. If we'll remember correctly, when Act 746 was passed, we had a Democrat governor. He signed that law. I don't believe that Asa Hutchinson would have even signed that law. He would have vetoed it. Asa Hutchinson and the elite, they think they're above everybody else. It's okay for them to have police protection and weapons to protect themselves, but the common man, the working man out there that actually pays the bills down at that Marble Palace, they don't have that right.
Yeah.
But we'll give that right to you if you'll pay us a fee.
Yeah.
And the citizens of Arkansas is fed up with it. I talk to people daily that are fed up with having to pay for something that God gave us. My concealed carry permit was signed in December of 1791. It does not expire.
Yeah.
It does not require retraining. It does not require me to send any more money to the state. And whenever the people start waking up and realizing that, then the legislators will have to do something, because the ones that won't do nothing will no longer have a job.
That's really good.
They'll be on that gravy train too long down there, and it's going to be time to get those people out, get some people back in that are constitutional conservatives, not Republicans, but constitutional conservatives that believe in the Constitution of the United States and believe in the Arkansas Constitution, and they put the power back in the hands of the people where it was intended to be to start with. And when they do that, they'll start seeing this state turn around. You'll start seeing jobs. You'll start seeing more people move into here. You'll start seeing taxes go down, and you'll see incomes go up. But until that happens, we're going to be stuck with a status quo in this state, and we know where that is. Mm-hmm. High taxes, low income. And if I hear that term, job magnets, one more time out of a legislator, I'm going to puke.
Yeah, because they're not actually they're not implementing the reforms the people have been voting for. They're coming back. They're trying to grow government and tell us they've made it smaller, and it's just not the case. Hey, Chuck Clifton.
I call it political Common Core math, Paul.
I like it. Chuck Clifton, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir. Thank you so much for coming on the program. I can't wait to do it again soon. And good luck with their Northwest Arkansas chapter. Folks, go to Facebook.com and search for Patriots of Act 746 and request to be a member of that page, 12,000 strong. Chuck, be safe, okay?
Thank you very much for having me, Paul.
All righty. Folks, we got to take a break. It's Conduit News Radio. Good morning. Back in a moment. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Now then, attend, as friend to friend, our declaration committee. For us I see immortality in Philadelphia City.
So everyone is sending me messages. I got a bunch of messages yesterday about Asa Hutchinson's new Facebook ad, where he uses Ronald Reagan's endorsement back when he ran for Senate the first time. And I got to tell you, I mean, again, Governor Asa Hutchinson's pivot to the right is, I mean, it is flattering. We should all feel flattered. I'm flattered, Governor. I really am, that you are acknowledging the people and the actual conservative positions of this state. You have a record, however, that, I mean, if you look at your record, sir, I'm sorry, but I don't think Mr. Reagan would be a fan. But hey, it's a good ad. I mean, good for you. You know, I noticed one other thing about Asa's ad. And listen, the more his real record gets out, the more people who see that will just, be pretty upset and will speak out to their friends and be like, you can't believe that. But, I noticed one thing. Initially, back in 2014 when he was running for office, his Second Amendment ads, when he said he was for the Second Amendment, it was him holding a shotgun. And it was him, looking like a hunter because, the Second Amendment's about duck hunting. And but not anymore. His ad now, he's now pivoted, and now he's holding a sidearm, and he's firing it. He's firing it. I'd love to ask Jan Morgan about his form and see if he's doing everything the right way. But do you think it has anything to do you think that now his Second Amendment ads go from him holding a shotgun to him firing a handgun? Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that his primary opponent is a trained gun instructor and who owns a firing range? Do you think it has anything to do with that? I do. I think it's patently obvious the political chess or checkers that Asa is playing here. And it's just fascinating to watch. It is fascinating to watch this guy who doesn't have the time of day for conservatives, doesn't have the time of day for limited government, unless he has a primary opponent. I mean, it's just incredible to me. It's absolutely incredible to me. But anyway, I have seen it. I know everybody's been sending it to me. Can you believe this? I'm like, yeah. They're also there's a radio interview. You remember when Asa took a break from MSNBC and CNN, and he actually went on Fox and Friends, and the host there, Brian Kilmeade, did a very softball interview where they talked about the polls that ranked Governor Hutchinson a popular governor or something, and so they've taken that interview and they've made it an ad because it's going out on radio, and it's because they know that there's a lot of people in Arkansas that watch Fox and Friends every morning. And so it's like, oh, well, you listen to Brian Kilmeade every day, and so here's Asa with Brian Kilmeade, and he's saying that Asa's a popular governor and he's doing a good job. Anyway, like I said, it's in a way it's flattering. He's acknowledging that the base of this state is actually conservative. But you got to look at his record: increased spending, $600 million, and increased taxes as well, the tire tax.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
$1 billion on Medicaid, and now we're spending $7 billion on Medicaid. It's the difference between those two numbers that I think it's not rocket science why we have a corruption problem going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, the more money we're handing out in Medicaid, and then, like I said, you see these entities have these special, interests that they have of seeing such and such happen. And when you read the plea agreements of some of these people, you've been down there, you can see what's happened and how they did it and how they set it up. And that's why you have some of the guilty pleas, you have some of the upcoming trials that's coming on. And, it just gets back to, and it's even past that, Paul. It has to do with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Once they passed the private option, big Medicaid, big insurance company subsidy in 2013, a few months later they hired Jonathan Dismang's best friend as a lobbyist. I mean, that kind of cronyism, to say the least.
Yeah.
The former legal staff of Governor Mike Beebe, then as soon as he got out of office, guess who he went to work? Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Wow.
And now he's the chief lawyer there, making no telling how much money, more money than he was when he was in the government sector.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have these situations come up like this, and you go out and talk to the regular people, and they understand it and they get it, because these big insurance companies are literally taking advantage and raping the citizens out here on health care costs, because there's not that many of them. They know they're the only game in town. They've got the Little Rock and legislators down there having their back down there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the simple truth.
We're talking with Senator Brian King. You've been following the task force. I call it a farce. They're talking about eliminating exemptions, and which is a tax increase. And I know they'd probably say, well, we want to cut taxes here and, do kind of a tax shifting shell game. But I got a feeling when it's all said and done, there's going to be more money going to the government. They're going to try to sell it to everybody as a tax decrease. But, if there's more money going to the government, and like you've just outlined, Senator King, we're kind of in a budget crisis, and they need more money to keep this gravy train going without it having to admit that they've mismanaged our money, and it all does go back to Medicaid. So what are your thoughts on the task force on taxes?
Yeah, it's just another thing, how they've mismanaged the budget and spent more, and now they've got to kind of try and figure out ways to, creative ways to get more revenue. The thing about it is, the governor talks about, and these leaders talk about how much they're saving and everything like that. We're spending more than ever. What they don't want to talk about is that no Arkansas governor during the time he's been in, or this administration's leadership, has taken in more tax dollars. We're spending record amounts of tax dollars. And they have to go out here and look at these exemptions, and probably some of these exemptions need to be looked at, because, quite frankly, they're probably special interests. That's how they got in there.
Right.
But yet, on the other hand, what doesn't get touched is back to Medicaid, and the spending part is the big insurance companies are protected in this whole thing. The big Medicaid entities, like the nursing homes, they're protected. Oh, they'll go out and say this or that, but reality is, if you keep looking at the spending and the amount of money we're getting, I mean, we're spent $5 billion on these insurance companies on this Medicaid expansion, and we haven't improved the overall health ranking of the state of Arkansas. Okay, you would think, I mean, we're sitting here, Paul, and they're laying off 200 people at UAMS. And no one wants to talk about it down there. I mean, laying off people at UMS is going to dramatically affect our health care here in Arkansas. I mean, it's our only medical school. It's like our medical school is having a stroke, and yet legislators and the governor failed to recognize that and failed to do anything about it, and now you've got layoffs out there at a time we're spending record amounts of Medicaid dollars line in the pockets of these big insurance companies. It just, blows my mind.
Wow. Yeah, that is it's crazy. You ever get frustrated? I mean, you've been against Medicaid expansion this entire time. It's you always, and a lot of your Republican colleagues used to be against it. I mean, I think about some of them that used to say that Medicaid expansion would gobble up the entire Arkansas budget back when they were against it, and now, of course, they support it. And I guess I'm wondering, are they ever, when they come to raise our taxes, I just don't think they're going to be honest with us and say, well, it's because we need money for a welfare program. I think eventually they'll just keep taking money from prisons or keep taking money from education and get to the pain.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, it's hour number 2. Thanks so much for being with us. As always, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, that's what you're listening to. You have found it. We want to see conservative ideas actually implemented, not just talked about on the campaign trail, so these politicians can, assume power and then do nothing for their constituents. Folks, the number 870-275-9799. Call or text that or sound off on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Conduit News. And welcome back to the program. Good friend, we have Josh Waters, and Josh is from Political Strategies. Josh, thanks so much for being on the program, sir.
Hey, good morning, Paul. How's everything going?
Going well, going well. How are things going over there in your neck of the woods?
Oh, they're going well. Staying busy. I know everyone's looking forward to the primaries coming up here in a few weeks, and so busy researching that and working on some other things. And, of course, the tax task force will be meeting in a couple of weeks. So,
yeah.
But been able to go to a few conferences lately as well. So it's been a good few weeks lately.
Well, so one of those conferences was the 1789 Alliance, correct? Tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, the 1789 Alliance, kind of backing up, I think a lot of people this day and age would agree, and, kind of co-founder Joe Maynard has said, at the federal level, we probably realize that the vote of the people, that it's lost to the vote of the people. But what we can do is at the state level, basically take back our country from the state level. And that's something this 1789 Alliance group believes as well. So what it is, Paul, is it's a group of similar organizations to Conduit for Action, mostly 501c4 nonprofits that are action organizations that do, lobbying at the Capitol, inform the citizens about legislation that's going on, what politicians are saying versus what they're doing. And so this conference was basically, I've gone the last 2 years, and it's a time for, these groups to come together, talk about best practices, what's worked in their state, what hasn't worked, and also just come together and talk about success stories that they've had and kind of see how they can take those to their own states and succeed as well for the cause of liberty.
Wow. So we have these other states, and you've met a lot of these other groups that are kind of in the trenches here, and are they having some of the same problems that Arkansas is having? Are we unique in that?
No, and that's something that really opened up my eyes, Paul, and that's something I kind of want to come on and talk about, encouraging the listeners to know, this isn't something, the fight for liberty, the fight for economic freedom, for smaller government in Arkansas, that fight is going on all around the country, in Texas, in Virginia, in Pennsylvania, other red states, maybe some bluer states as well. And the fight is, kind of the same characters when you think about the big government establishment Republicans are sometimes the biggest enemies to economic freedom and liberty in their states, and they're having to push back against that and get some conservative, constitutional conservatives elected. And so that's something, we talk about, for example, scorecards and the pushback that, there is in Arkansas sometimes on scorecards, because when you start telling the voters how their legislator actually voted versus what they said, that's a pretty powerful opportunity. And so that's what we're seeing some of these other states do as well, is a big emphasis on scorecards and letting the people know so they can at least be informed what their legislator actually voted on versus what they said.
Yeah, so you're saying these other groups in other states, they do the scorecard as well. And I mean, are there how do they handle criticism, I guess? I mean, what are they criticized from, leaders who maybe claim to be conservatives? I mean, because around here, if you point out that somebody voted for a tax increase and you say, well, that's not the conservative approach, we kind of have this, our politicians seem to have a knee-jerk reaction where they say, how dare you say I'm not a conservative, Do they get that same thing going on where they are?
Yeah, I'll share with you a story that was told from a friend from Missouri. what they did, they had a scorecard, and they would go to Republican committees, Lincoln Day dinners, those kind of events, and they would just, pass out the scorecard and let people know how the legislators voted. Well, there's this one particular event that this guy had went to, and he passed out the scorecard, and one of the legislators was actually there. I think she had like a C or a D on the scorecard, but she was kind of known, as this huge defender of the Second Amendment, and so a very socially conservative legislator. Well, this organization, kind of like Conduit, focused more on economic issues, fiscal policy. And so when we looked at the voting record on that, she had I think it was a C or a D. Well, Paul, this lady got so mad that this gentleman showed up and just passed out the scorecard and let her constituents know how she voted on fiscal issues. She tore up the scorecard in the face of this guy and stormed out of the building. And so then he was left, and he was the only other speaker there, and so he was able to use more time to talk through the issues and what these votes meant and what these bills meant. And so, that's something that I think we're going to see in all these different states, stories like that. And some similar situations have happened. And, I shared the example of, whenever the majority leader of your state makes a scorecard on scorecards, and it just got the biggest laugh. People were laughing, and one of the leading conservatives in the room said, he said, that's when you know you're winning, is when they have to make a scorecard to try to debunk your scorecard.
Yeah, that's pretty funny that they got the biggest kick out of that. Yeah, so maybe we are number one in something when it comes to absurdity. But wow, yeah, I mean, if see, and that's the reaction that you want. I mean, and what I mean by that is this situation, this story that you're telling, legislator sees a scorecard they don't like, so they stand up and they rip it up and they take their ball and they go home. I mean, that kind of reaction alone is one where you say, I don't care if the scorecard's true or not. If that's your reaction, in a public debate, I'm pretty sure that every one of your decisions and the wisdom behind them needs to be called into question, because I don't think you need to be representing me if you're going to react in such a juvenile way. So.
Yeah. Paul, something that we talked about at this conference was at the very beginning this time was, what are your strengths? And something that I think is the strength of Conduit, and this is what I shared with the group, was kind of 4 points. 1, tell the truth. 2, be willing and able to read. 3, be willing and able to do math. And 4, be willing and able to remember. Those seem like such basic things, but those really resonated with people at the conference, because sometimes when we get into the weeds on policy, it confuses people. But if you, at the end of the day, if you tell the truth, if you can read, if you're willing and able to do math, and you can remember, your guest Chuck Clifton earlier today, he was going back in history and saying, well, this is what they're saying now. But if you remembered, they said this before, or if you remember back, a few years ago, this is what the law said. And so I think that's a very, basic core function of what we could do to be effective advocates of liberty, is to be able to read, able to do math, and be able to remember. It seems basic, but I think it's so powerful because it really flies in the face of sometimes what we hear.
Yeah, and I think the remember part is the best one, because the narrative and it changes so often, and their version of events changes to suit where they want to go next. And it was just like we were talking about last hour, these dish payments to reimburse hospitals for uncompensated care. They were supposed to go away with Obamacare, and it was going to hurt hospitals. They've never gone away, and yet the talking point that the payments were going to go away was the key reason many of these legislators said we had to implement Medicaid expansion Obamacare, now called Arkansas Works. And it's just really sad. It's like, well, we have to be able to remember, and at some point, the next time you tell us one thing, maybe we have cause to not trust you and not even listen to you. I think at some point we've got to get to that place. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we'll have to wait and see. Josh, we've got the website up right now. It's 1789alliance.com, and it's exactly what you say. 1789 Alliance exists to catalyze, incubate, and build movements that empower citizens. We provide developmental support and networking opportunities for citizens and organizations promoting greater civic engagement and participation. So it seems like it's a great organization, and you met some pretty interesting folks while you were there?
Yeah, a lot of great folks from, really all over the country, from, like I said, from Texas to New York, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and everywhere in between, too, and just doing a lot of the same work. And so, it was encouraging as well to see, okay, sometimes you might get down, or the grassroots conservatives might get down, but I want to encourage all the grassroots conservatives to know, we're doing our part here in Arkansas. These other groups are doing their part in their state. And if we keep the fight, we can take back this country from the state level. When you think about the 10th Amendment, everyone always, says, yeah, states' rights, 10th Amendment. Well, something my econ law professor always mentioned to us was, it's not just the states, it's for the people. The people, what's not specifically spelled out in the Constitution, is reserved to the state and the people. And so I think that's a very powerful thing. It doesn't just have to be, the state and organizing through the state function. It can be the people rising up and themselves organizing and fighting back and saying, hey, this is what we want our government to look like in our area of the country. And so that's what I see a lot of these organizations doing, and I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's encouraging to me that they have some of the same struggles and the same criticism as Conduit, or in Arkansas, I would just probably say Conduit has. No, there are some others. I take that back. I mean, you look at Family Council, like they've come under fire. They came under fire for their scorecard as well, and everything else. So, there are Arkansas organizations that to me is encouraging. That there are people. Yeah. And this is really, if we're honest here, I mean, this is a battle that's happening among people who claim that they're conservatives, mostly under the Republican Party banner. And that's really where this struggle is taking place. And so it is encouraging that other states are having similar problems, and that we do need to continue to, press forward, just get the information to the people, get the truth to the people. And I think over time, a broad view is going to show that the people are going to make different decisions, and hopefully liberty will advance. So,
yeah, I mean, I'll just take example in Virginia. Virginia had a lot of very close elections. Now, remember, Virginia is not as conservative, it's not Republican as Arkansas. If anything, it's probably almost a blue state at this point. But Virginia, in their state legislature, was controlled by the Republican Party, both in the House and by a one-vote majority in the Senate. And, Paul, just on that one-vote majority in the Senate, they were able to stop Medicaid expansion in the state of Virginia. By one vote in a blue state, the Republicans were true constitutional conservative Republicans and stopped Medicaid expansion in Virginia. And so that's a success story, and there's other success stories from around the country.
Now, at the time, now that's what Virginia has a Democratic governor, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder if that has anything
to do.
And
so now they're facing the fight again because, as you know, the elections went. They still have a majority in the Senate and the House, but it's a much smaller majority in Virginia. So they're fighting the fight again right now, actually. And so I've been reaching out and sharing as much information. Be like, do not do this. It will blow up your budget. You won't be able to get anything else done. And really just going through a lot of what you talk about and what Conduit has been talking about for years on that issue. And that's something that's been good at this conference to see, okay, this policy in your state, how has it worked out?
Yeah, and it's exactly right. I'm glad that you're doing that, reaching out to Virginia. They tried to do the same thing in Georgia, and I did something similar because Eric Erickson's show out of Atlanta. He's a very powerful voice down there, and I went on his show and it was basically like, hey, do not do this. Whatever you do, it has been a disaster in Arkansas. Please do not do this. And so anyway, I think the I mean, to date, they have not expanded Medicaid, so they still may be trying to. But anyway, let's hope Virginia doesn't make that mistake and the Republicans actually act like Republicans. But well, Josh, I appreciate you coming on talking about the 1789 Alliance. I know you've met some great folks, and I appreciate you actually connecting these folks as well that you've met in other states with the program, because I know we're going to be interviewing them soon, and I really appreciate that and look forward to it.
Yeah, well, thanks for getting them on there. I think it's going to be good, and hopefully serve as an encouragement to all the listeners, all the grassroots warriors out there in this state to see, hey, we're not alone in this fight for liberty. There's other people around the country that are joining arms, and I think it's going to be good and hopefully be encouraging. So I'm looking forward to hearing them on the show in the next few weeks. All
right, Josh Waters, appreciate you with Political Strategies. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Take care.
All righty, folks. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment. Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages, because right now my feelings are so hurt, and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny, so you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
The eagle's going to crack the shell of the egg that England laid.
Yes, sir, we can tell, on this humid Monday morning in this congressional incubator.
And just as Tom here has written, though the shell may belong to Great Britain, the eagle inside belongs to us.
And just as Tom here has written, we say to hell with Great Britain, the eagle inside belongs to us.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. If you missed the first hour, I would encourage you to go back and listen to the first segment of the first hour, because we talked about the DSH payments, disproportionate share hospital payments with Medicare and Medicaid, have still not gone away, which was the key justification for expanding Obamacare in Arkansas. But we specifically talked about the fact that hospitals and insurance companies are fleecing the taxpayers. And if you want more information on that, and I mean hard data, for example, the fact that we now have, more administrators than we do than we do doctors. And it's really all about this buzzword. It's called hospital math. Yeah, we now have 10 administrators for every one doctor, and this all started with Obamacare. And just the cost of health care is the biggest deal. The problem is that America is being crushed by a top-heavy system of profiteers who are exceptionally good at extracting money and convincing the rest of us they deserve it. That is, in a nutshell, our healthcare system. If you want more information on that, I would highly recommend you go listen to the first hour, specifically that first segment in the first hour. Coming up at I guess at 7:33 here in just a little bit, we're going to be talking with Mr. Kenneth Hickson. Kenneth is he is running for the Supreme Court Justice seat, and so we'll talk to him. It's always very interesting when you do these judicial interviews because they're nonpartisan, and so you can't ever. I mean, it frustrates me. I wish judicial positions were partisan, just so you know. That's my position. I wish that as a judge in Arkansas, you ran as a Democrat or Republican or whatever, or you had the freedom to. And the reason is because I don't pretend. I think it's more honest with the people. I do not pretend I think it's a fallacy that judges are neutral, I guess I would say, at least today in the 21st century. I just think it's a fallacy, right? I mean, it's to me, it's a political opinion. If you interpret the Constitution as an originalist would do, this is what the law says. I believe that that's now political. That's a political point of view, right? And if it's a political point of view, then it needs to. Why not involve political parties? That's my point. If you believe it's a living document that changes over time because human beings somehow are not the same as they were in the 18th century in terms of capacity for evil, well, then that's also a political point of view. You believe that somehow through legislation that the government can perfect man. Okay, well, and I'd like to be able to ask in-depth issues because, see, on those two issues, right, on those two competing sides of the same coin, there's a whole lot of political issues and principles in the Democrat platform or the Republican platform that, you could ask. Or you know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's my opinion. Some people disagree with it, and I get that. But anyway, we're going to interview Mr. Kenneth Hickson when we come back at 7:33. We're up against a hard break. It is 7:29. Back in just a moment. Point, and then they can say, well, we need to raise taxes for education, teachers, or fire department, or law enforcement. That's what they do at the local level. So, that's pretty frustrating, right? It's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating because it's a shell game, because the raise the taxes part, our percentage of this match rate that is continuing to go up, and now at a time when we're taking in record amounts of tax dollars, we should be running right now, somewhere between $250 and a $400 million surplus right now, easily, with the amount of money that we're taking in and the amount of things that could be done to actually reduce spending, we should be running that kind of surplus, which would give us tremendous amounts of money for highways, fight crime, that stuff. But we're not. And it is very frustrating to see the rubber stamping process and the budget process down there where they came in there. And I put out on Facebook the other day, and I mean all your listeners out there, you know, their increase in spending proposed this next year, you know, over 3%. I'm like, are workers at the local plant out here, are they getting a 3% raise? Mm-hmm. No. Farmers in my district, are they getting a 3% raise? No. I mean, they're having to do, you know, work harder, pay more, and do with less. At the time down in Little Rock, they keep having to raise the spending. I mean, teachers in my district, did they see a 3% raise? So, you know, I just, it's very frustrating to see what goes on, and the fact that all of a sudden we're in this great financial shape right now. And the other thing is, too, when you look at the amount of federal money that we're spending in this Medicaid and keep going, you know, if anybody's concerned about the debt and the deficit, it's not Washington, D.C., it's also these legislators that keep raising that. And then they talk about fiscal responsibility. I'm still trying to figure out how you have limited government. You don't have limited government by spending record amounts of money. I mean, if we just, the last Democrat governor spent far less than what has happened over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, it just, you know, like I said, when I came in 2007, Paul, there were a lot of Democrats on the committee that were business people. They sit there and you know, I learned a lot from them, and they grinded the budget down. They methodically thought about things. Well, if you add this cost this year, in 4 years, where are you going to be at and how are you going to pay for it? That was the questions that asked that doesn't get asked today. That is exactly why Governor Huckabee, through his leadership, and some members of the General Assembly at the time, sit there, and we were spending $1.6 billion less, and it produced almost $1 billion surplus.
Wow.
So right now, this bunch is spending $1.6 billion more and have almost no surplus.
Yeah, what you're essentially describing is an environment where when Democrats had control, they were more fiscally conservative than our Republican majorities are now. I mean, that's what is going on.
I never meant to go into politics. It wasn't my intention when I was young. But I was raised to believe you had to pay your way for the blessings bestowed on you. I was happy with my career in the entertainment world, but I ultimately went into politics because I wanted to protect something precious. Ours was the first revolution in the history of mankind that truly reversed the course of government, and with three little words: we the people. We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car, and we decide where it should go and by what route and how fast. Almost all the world's constitutions are documents in which governments tell the people what their privileges are. Our Constitution is a document in which we, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do. We, the people, are free.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. Now, one of the ways that we get to steer government and tell the government what it is allowed to do is with our vote. And thankfully, in Arkansas, we get to vote for judges. And specifically, we get to vote for Arkansas Supreme Court judges. Here is one of those candidates we have on the program in the phone with us, Mr. Kenneth Hickson, who is a candidate for Arkansas Supreme Court. Kenneth, welcome, sir.
Hey, thank you very much. It's Judge Hickson, and appreciate you letting me be on your show.
Yes, Judge, we appreciate it very much. So tell us a little bit about why you decided to run for this Supreme Court seat.
Well, that's a fair question. You know, I'm like everyone else, and I just read the same newspapers and the same blogs, and, you know, it got to a point where I could sense, and I think the public could sense, that we need a change on the Supreme Court. We've had a big change down there with the past 4 or 5 years. You know, Jim Hanna was a chief and a man of character, and Paul Danielson and Robert Brown, Donnie Corbin. We've had a big change since 2012, and it's just gotten to a point where I had some people calling me, encouraging me to run. And finally, literally on the day before the deadline, I threw my hat into the ring because I'm hoping I'm the person that can help restore confidence in the Supreme Court, which I think Arkansans deserve.
So when you say restore confidence, what do you think has happened that has weakened that confidence that the public has or doesn't have?
That's a hard question to answer. I don't know any of the inner workings of the Supreme Court. They're on their side of the building, and we're on our side. I've been on Court of Appeals for 5.5 years now, and it's just a feeling that I get, and it's also what I've been hearing around the state. I have literally been in the four corners of the state for the past month, and the complaint that I hear most of all, and I hear it from all four corners, is that the public believes that our Supreme Court has gotten too political. When I ask them what they mean by being too political, it's hard for them to put into words. So it's equally hard for me to put into words, but that is the most common complaint that I hear as I'm driving around the state.
Yeah, and I was just talking about this before our segment, and just in terms of how, for me, as somebody who, I'm a very political guy. I'm, on the far right of the political spectrum, and when I interview judicial candidates, it's always hard because I know you guys can't talk about what could be potential cases in front of you, and I totally understand that. But because it's a nonpartisan thing, it ends up, kind of being difficult. And I try to make these interviews not about a popularity contest, which is the danger of a judicial race. It can kind of tend to go in that direction. And so let me ask you, we're talking with Judge Kenneth Hickson from the Court of Appeals. When you look at our Constitution, the United States Constitution, or the Arkansas Constitution, would you describe yourself more as an originalist, or would you describe yourself more as the Constitution is a living, changing document over time?
So some questions are difficult. that one's not. I think Justice Scalia probably said it best. At one point, he said that it's not alive, it's dead. It's a document. But then he later on softened that blow and said it's enduring. And I think the word enduring is probably the better word. But I would call myself, I'm not into labels, to be honest with you, but I would say I would be an originalist, and I would view the Constitution, any issue that has to interpret the Constitution, try to view it from the same viewpoint as the Founding Fathers. That's a little ambiguous to people out there, but that seems to be the most common definition of originalism, and that would be my goal, is to look at it from that point of view.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And from just a standpoint of Western civilization and its integrity, the definitions of words are important in law. And I'm not an attorney, but in the legal world, the definitions of those words they mean something. And what those definitions meant in the 18th century, that is what informed their opinions as to what was the best and proper way to move forward when they crafted our laws, when they crafted these documents. And so, when you put it... Go ahead.
That's exactly right. And I tell you by way of an analogy, perhaps, and that is whenever you start out, I guess I started out with the King James Version of the Bible, and it has all the these and thous and the proper English. And every few generations, you get a new version of the Bible, and you finally get down to, I think, what they call now is the Living Translation. And every time they translate it, the words change a little bit. And when you change the words, the meaning changes a little bit. So you have to be careful whenever you get new versions of a document that you stay with the original intent. And the one good thing about the Constitution is that it hasn't changed. Those words mean the same thing now as they did 200 some odd years ago.
Yeah.
And whether that's a proper analogy, that is what comes to mind.
Well, what's funny is I've often seen the contradictory to me, it's when in the political world, when people who typically are on the left say that the Constitution is a living document, which means that it changes over time. When I was growing up in church, I was told that the Bible was a living document, but the definitions are different. The Bible being a living document, meaning what was written back then still applies to us now. And it's still powerful now, right? And that's why it's still
absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, it's weird that when they say living document in the Constitution, it actually means that the text changes as to how it applies to us. You know?
I read another article by Justice Scalia not too long ago, and I thought it was pretty interesting. He said, and this is probably a poor paraphrase, but he said that society changes over the years, and because society changes over the years, our morals or our mores change over the years, and our legislatures change over the years, and therefore our laws change over the years. But the way we view them constitutionally does not. You still view our current laws with those same lenses that the Founding Fathers would have viewed them through 200 some odd years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought he explained that pretty well, that lay people could understand, because constitutional issues can get pretty complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. We're talking with Judge Kenneth Hickson. Now, Judge, I was thinking about what has happened, I guess, the last judicial elections. We had some talk after the fact that maybe the people don't need to have the right to elect you guys anymore, and that we need to move to an appointment system with the Arkansas Bar Association combined with the executive branch of our government, the governor's office, making the decisions. And one of the reasons was because they say dark money, which is something that they define. It was just kind of what you were saying earlier, maybe that they were using the same terms anyway, the politics and everything else. So I'm curious, do you agree with the status quo, which is the people get to pick, or would you support moving to an appointment system?
That's a good question. The appointed judges scheme has worked pretty well in the federal system, and I understand people who support that. The problem that I see with it, and this is just kind of from a layman's point of view, is that every time you read an article in a newspaper about a decision that a federal judge made or a federal appeals court made, within the first or second paragraph, the author of the article inserts who the president who appointed the judge was. And that almost, to me, inserts politics into the appointment scheme. And that has always left me feeling a little uncomfortable. I'll be honest with you, and that campaigning for a statewide race is very difficult, and sometimes I think, is this the best way to do it? But I come down on the side that the people of Arkansas have a right to know their candidates, have a right to know their judges, and have a right to talk with them and learn something about them. And I come down on the side that voting for judges is the best thing for Arkansas. Maybe it's not the best thing for the federal court system.
I really appreciate that's a very thoughtful way to look at it. It seems to me like you're going to have politics involved either way, in either appointment or an electoral process.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you there just on the term politics.
Okay.
We need to keep politics out of the Supreme Court race. It's a nonpartisan race. Now, we somewhat inject politics into it because we go to GOP meetings, we go to Democrat meetings, because that's where the voters are. So it's almost a two-edged sword. We want to keep politics out, but yet we go to these meetings to meet the voters. But every time I go out to a GOP meeting or a Democrat meeting, I never use the term Democrat or Republican or conservative or liberal describing myself. I was taught back in 2012 when I ran for the Court of Appeals, just don't say those words. because that kind of violates the spirit of a nonpartisan race.
I think some people, though, we're talking with Judge Kenneth Hickson. I think some people, though, associate. I mean, I'm a skeptic. I kind of think a lot of things are political, or most things are, if not all. But I guess over the years, you've heard what has now become a political term, legislating from the bench. And I think there are a lot of people that believe that there have been judicial actions that have essentially made law instead of interpret the law. Likewise, I think there's a movement by the legislature to try to take away some of the judicial branch's responsibility. What are y'all's powers? So can you just talk a little bit about the benefit of a separation of powers and what that means for our government?
Well, the separation of powers is what differentiates us from other forms of government. You know, we have the legislative branch and the executive branch, which is political. I mean, but all of our representatives, senators, and our governor and other officers, those are political races, and rightly so. But the judicial system is supposed to be an independent, for sure independent from politics. And a friend of mine told me the other day that he viewed the judicial system, particularly the Supreme Court, as the last bastion of democracy because we interpret the laws. We don't make the laws. I don't know if he used the phrase judicial activism or not. But that's kind of the buzzword these days. Mm-hmm. We don't want judicial activism. But it is just hugely important to me and to most clear-thinking Arkansans that we do not want our judges making the law. Where we see this a lot, at least in the media, is out in California on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They're probably the most famous or infamous, depending which way you look at it, about taking laws and changing them to suit their own philosophy. We are pretty fortunate in Arkansas. We've had some decisions that have the appearance of judicial activism, and I can't tell you one off the top of my head, but our job is to interpret the Constitution and our statutes and not to enable or create laws. I tell people on the campaign trail, if you don't like a law, you need to vote in a representative or a senator who feels like you feel and get him to propose a law. That's the way laws are supposed to be changed in a representative democracy and not through the court system.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's where we're going to leave it. Judge Kenneth Hickson, a candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court. You're currently on the Court of Appeals. I'd love to have you back on, and we can do this again soon, and best of luck to you on the campaign trail.
Hey, I appreciate it very much, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to your audience.
All righty. Yes, sir. Be safe. Folks, we're going to take a break. This is Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in just a moment.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right. Good morning. Thanks so much for being with us. So Doug Thompson's back with another piece about the public corruption trial of John Woods over at ArkansasOnline.com or in your Arkansas Democrat Gazette this morning. The headline, Jury in Former Arkansas Senator's Corruption Trial Set to Hear Kickback Evidence. Both sides make opening remarks. So the jury's ready to go. We're ready to get this trial underway of Senator John Woods. Here's a quote from the Assistant U.S. Attorney Kenneth Elser in an opening statement Tuesday afternoon. Quote, "This case is about the betrayal of the people of Arkansas by this defendant, John Woods." This case is about the betrayal of the people of Arkansas by this defendant, John Woods. I think that's a pretty important summary. Betrayal. You have a man elected to office who uses his position to illegally enrich himself. And I have to use the term illegally because I think a lot of people enrich themselves by going down there somehow or another. I'll give you an example, just on the federal level. You know, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook was testifying yesterday, and from the time his testimony began to the time it ended, he got $3 billion richer in that time because of Facebook's stock price going back up after it's been tanking. By the way, Zuckerberg sold a bunch of stock before it tanked. And you got like Nancy Pelosi, for example, that owns a bunch of Facebook stock. Did you know that? She owns like $500,000 worth of Facebook stock. And then you look at how many people that were questioning Mark Zuckerberg yesterday actually have taken money from Facebook in some capacity. But back to John Woods, a betrayal of our trust. When it all comes down to it, folks, these politicians that took the kickbacks are thieves. They're thieves. They stole from us. The government will call its first witnesses, according to Doug Thompson, today. The trial is expected to last at least 3 weeks, according to U.S. District Judge Timothy Brooks. I wonder what, it doesn't say what the defense said here. It says what the prosecution said. But I don't see where it says, I just want to know what the defense says. How are you going to defend this? Let's see, all three, let's see, here we go. What is Woods really accused of doing, okay? Well, we know that he helped steer $621,500 of improvement funds to a Christian college called Ecclesia. This according to Elser's summary of the case, the prosecution. During the same time as the grants were coming in, $267,420 was paid by Ecclesia as directed by Orrin Paris, according to the prosecution. Of that, $210,420 was removed by Shelton in large cash withdrawals and the $40,000 wire transfer to Woods, with another $9,235 taken out by automated withdrawals. Arkansas legislators gave nearly $700,000 of taxpayer money from the state's General Improvement Fund to the private Christian college in Springdale. Man, I'm telling you, this is crazy. And we really haven't even gotten to the other matter, and Doug Thompson does bring this up, that Woods is also accused of taking kickbacks with indicted lobbyist Milton Russell Rusty Cranford of Bentonville. Now, Cranford, he's set to go to trial in May, but up in Missouri, on one count of conspiracy and 8 counts of accepting bribes in his indictment. No word yet as to whether or not they're going to get him for attempted murder, because, of course, the story that he tried to hire a hitman to kill a guy in New Jersey who was going to testify against him. Medicaid mafia. See, that's where you have this connection. You have to understand something. Remember something, folks. We have this General Improvement Fund scam, and we have the people who are participating in it, have participated in it, and there may be more shoes to drop, more of them that have been taking kickbacks. But the FBI was investigating GIF, and it led them to Medicaid. And the Medicaid, we're talking a lot more money. We're talking murder we're talking murder money, essentially, GIF money, maybe not worth killing somebody over. Medicaid money, apparently, well, let's just say your options kind of expand a little bit. You know what I mean? Folks, I want to remind you that if you want a copy of this broadcast, go to conduitnews.com. That's conduitnews.com. Go over to our YouTube page, Conduit News, and subscribe, and also click to get notifications for our smaller videos, as well as if you want the full video today, you just go to facebook.com/conduitnews and watch it. If you missed the first hour, when you get to your office, just go to facebook.com/conduitnews and watch the first hour from your computer desk at work. And, just have the mouse button over that minimization button so when your boss walks by, you can click out of it and act like you're working and not consuming the best of Arkansas politics. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. Arkansas, thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow at 6 a.m. Arkansas, be safe.